We're so nervous that our kids are going to be bored for 4.5 seconds, that they have 11 different activities to do, and there's actually no time for just like free play. There's a big value in kids getting in trouble and having to like figure a way out of it. What are they learning scrolling Instagram? They are not learning social skills. I do believe it's important to be bold in every area of your life. I always think to myself before I do anything, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm not going to be any worse off after the fact than I am right now. Why not? If you're bold, you just act. I shoot and then aim my whole life. It's actually worked out for me. If you allow yourself to go down this rabbit hole of all the things that can go wrong, you'll end up with analysis paralysis and do nothing. Don't be so afraid of the word no. I really believe things are a numbers game, right? You throw a lot of stuff at the wall. Some things are going to stick and some things won't. That can lead you on a path that you would otherwise never have gotten to.
Hi, everyone. So today I'm joined by Jen Cohen. And let me tell you, this is one of those conversations that really stuck with me. Jen is known for being bold and direct, but what I love most is how she makes boldness feel doable. She breaks it down as something anyone can practice, not just something that you're born with. And we also get into something that a lot of us are thinking about right now. And it's how to raise kids who are actually resilient. Not just confident, but really able to handle life. Jen talks openly about parenting in the age of phones and how she sets boundaries at home and why letting kids fail might be one of the greatest gifts we can give them. It's so hard. This episode is packed with practical ideas, not just for parents, but for anyone who wants to show up more courageously in their own life. Welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. Let's go. Jennifer Cohen, welcome to my house. I've been to your house.
Yes.
And I want to start this conversation really talking, because for me, we're going to be talking about children and resiliency today. But what I thought was important is, in a way, you've said this differently, but actually for adults. Mm-hmm. When you were talking about boldness, when I was doing my homework, I thought, oh, she's done this message for adults, and now she's understanding as a mom, as a civilian, member of society, we need to embolden our children and talk about some certain things. And so the thing that really jumped out at me is a lot of times when someone sees someone bold, like you are bold, you're naturally like a get in there person, ask questions. I'm always impressed with like who you have on your podcast. Oh, like you'll ask anyone.
I'll ask anybody. Yep.
Let's talk about that, because there's people who like maybe they want to ask someone out on a date, or they want to ask their boss for a raise, or they have these things in their life, and because it's important to them, maybe they won't. So what is it in you? And I know you started young in your life, where you have the confidence and you say like, I'm going to call anyone I want and say, hey, I want to talk to you and come on my show.
Well, thank you. First of all, the interesting thing is, I always think to myself before I do anything, I think like, what's the worst that can happen, right? I'm not going to be any worse off after the fact than I am right now. So why not? Like that's how I always like enter any situation. So whenever I start to talk myself out of an opportunity or a potential opportunity, I always say to myself, I like do a lot of self-talk. I think self-talk has been like my best friend, because if you allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole of why things won't happen and overthink, because overthinking is what gets people in trouble, right? They overthink all the things why something will go wrong or can't happen. But like my whole position is, if you're bold, you just act, like you shoot and then aim. That's how I act. I shoot and then aim my whole life. And it's worked out. It's actually worked out for me, because if you allow, like I said, if you allow yourself to go down this rabbit hole of all the things that can go wrong and what can happen, you'll end up with analysis paralysis and do nothing. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, I really believe things are a numbers game, right? You throw a lot of stuff at the wall, and some things are going to stick and some things won't. And you kind of just like live your life that way. And what will happen is you'll experience so many more things, and opportunity will come your way by just giving it a shot. And so I always think, and then the other thing I always think is, and I'm sure this has happened to you, when you start putting people on pedestals, you see them from far away and you're like, oh, wow, look at them. Look how great they are. Look how smart they are. Look how successful they are. And then when you actually get a moment or a chance to meet that person, I don't know about you, but me, what I always notice is like, they're not that much different than me. They're not that much greater than I am, or anybody, to be honest. Like, everybody's basically the same. Everyone's just human. They put on their pants one leg at a time. They go to the bathroom the same way as we do. But the only difference is things may have worked out for them maybe a little bit more because they tried one more time.
Yeah.
And so that's how I live my life. Like, maybe just trying that one extra time would maybe get me to that place.
What occurs to me when I see you and when I talk to you is you also have somehow retained like a childlike wonder. So I think when you ask somebody, because it seems to be coming from that place, I think that then people are going to be less resistant. And when kids ask people they don't know questions, they're not self-conscious. They're curious. They're wondering. And curiosity is a big thing for you. So you've managed to protect that. And I also think it's one of your kind of advantages.
You're 100% right. Like, to me, I'm first of all, I think curiosity is a superpower. And I think that curiosity will get you places that nothing else will, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you are genuinely interested in things, like genuinely, right, you'd be, and you ask with like that, like that open heartness, and like, you're not you're not judgmental, you're just curious.
Yeah.
You will learn so many things that you would otherwise not know, that can lead you on a path that you would otherwise never have gotten to. And I do believe like people are disarmed by it, right? Because like, you're right. Like, I think that a lot of times, like, things have maybe worked out for me in that way because it's disarming. Like, I'm asking questions that probably they're like, holy shit, like, I'm surprised that this person's even asking that question. Okay, I'll answer that, or okay. And also it's coming from a good place.
Again, that's why I use the word childlike, which doesn't mean childish.
It's childlike.
Because kids are pure.
Yeah.
And if they ask you, it's because they genuinely want to know.
And that's what I do too. And I think also, it's like I said, it disarms people, right? I think when you're coming from a good place, people can feel it and see it. And I think that the other thing is, I always lead because it's actually genuine, because I genuinely am curious. I'm not asking because I'm not asking for an opportunity. I'm not asking because I'm malicious. I'm not asking because I'm judgmental. I'm asking because I just kind of want to know.
Yeah.
And again, I go with that whole idea of like, well, what's the worst that can happen? They tell me to shut up, or it's not my business. And if they do, then I just won't, I'll be okay with it and I'll move on. And like, I think the underlying, or the overarching message is, don't be so afraid of the word no, or by somebody's response to to somebody's how they respond to whatever your question or comment or request is. I think so many people are just very sensitive and scared of what the person will respond with. And if you can train your brain not to care or get comfortable with the no, or get comfortable with the rejection, and reframe that to be something like, well, I guess it's not me, it's the question, or it's the opportunity, or it's their issue.
Yeah. Maybe they're afraid or they're uncomfortable. Have you had a situation where you ask a question and someone goes, I don't want to talk about it?
All the time. I mean, it happens all the time. What do you mean? Today, it happens all the time, but I don't let it get me down, or I don't let it put me into a place where then it stops me from doing it again.
Yeah.
Because again, I think I reframe it to like, well, I guess that person's not for me, or it's their thing, or they just didn't want to talk about it. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And I don't allow myself to be kind of like jarred by somebody else's actions or their response.
Did you grow up in a house? And I was said earlier, we were talking about like, you're Canadian, there's a politeness,
Yeah.
and kind of like deep values. coming from where you come from, but were your parents, are they very direct people?
Not really at all, actually. I think that my mom isn't especially direct. She's opinionated.
Okay.
But she's not direct. And people ask me that all the time, like, where did you get this from or whatever? How did you become this way? And I honestly say to people, you know what, I think it's just trial and error, right? Like, and I think part of it is like innate of how you are. And I think the other part is the skill. Like I call it the skill of being bold.
Yeah.
Anybody can be more bold. Anybody else can be more of something by just practicing that thing.
Yeah.
And I think I just practiced I guess I practiced being bold. I had a few early wins when I did, and that helped me to the next thing. And I think that's what life is, right? Like if you can get a couple of easy wins, that can help reshape and change the trajectory of how you live your life. And that's kind of what I did. Like I had a couple easy wins. I shouldn't say easy. I had some wins. And then I'm like, okay, this can work. Okay, let me try again. Like there's this whole other idea. Have you heard of this thing where like again, it's kind of like, what's the worst that can happen? It's kind of like, like if you say to someone like, what are the chances ... right? Let's say you want to get a discount at something, right? Like, what are the like if you're traveling and you want an upgrade of your hotel room, like what are the chances that you can give me an upgrade on my room, right? 50% of the chance they can say yes, 50% they say no. But if you don't ask that question, most of the time you'd be shocked at how much more you can get by just asking like the question, right? Like what are the chances? Like you're asking very kind of directly and nonchalantly, and it's not aggressive.
Yeah, it's like, can you get me this or that? You're doing it politely.
You're being polite, yeah.
Do you do this with your friends and your partner? Like, do you have the same sort of boldness and that directness in those relationships, or does it change a little because it's personal? Like how do we bring that boldness? Because I've had to learn certain directness, but then there's sort of an art to it, right? Like I can do it without making the other person feel attacked.
Yes.
I can sort of say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. It doesn't mean you're wrong. So there's these other things that you learn through time. But I'm wondering if you've figured out how to bring that into the most intimate relationships with your children, with your, girlfriends or guy friends, and with your partner. Like, have you danced around that?
Yes. I think that overall people get uncomfortable when you're direct, right? That's just like the nature of human nature, right? So I think over time I've learned, right, through, again, a lot of trial and error and course correcting, the art of being a little more soft of how I am direct, because you have to take into account people can get offended easily. But at the same time, I do believe it's important to be bold in every area of your life. Like, I don't think, oh, you know what, I'm going to be bold in business, but then I'm not going to be bold in my personal life. Because the way I look at the word bold is it's basically two different things. It's that if I'm chasing what I want and not just taking what I get, I have to be specific and exact to what that is. And that goes with anything. And it's not what you say, it's again, how you say it. So have I been more abrupt in the past? Probably. Am I still sometimes abrupt? Yeah. But at least I'm self-aware enough to to kind of catch myself better now. And then maybe like be a little softer in my approach. But with that being said, I still believe that if you want to curate the life that you want to have in any walk, in the personal life, in your relationship, in your friendships, you have to be honest and earnest with what your expectations are. And I think people are so scared and they pussyfoot around what actually will make them happy. And so they just acquiesce to what's good enough, and they'll just like take whatever's available, and then they get resentful, and then they become passive aggressive, and it becomes a whole spiral that doesn't have to be if you were just precise in the first place.
Yeah. It's so true. And the worst thing you want to do is you don't want to go to sleep in your personal life. You really don't want to. You don't want to be phoning that in. And resentment is probably it's probably the most dangerous thing,
Yeah,
right?
for
Besides
sure.
dishonesty. I'm sure you have people in your life that are that direct with you when it's coming at you. You know, I live with somebody who's Laird is very direct.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell.
But I like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I have a theory about this because I've learned there's sort of a couple variables in this. I think people accept it easier from men, typically. Women are, I have confused a long time being a good and nice person with being direct and not realizing, oh no, I can be a good person and be direct. Because, they make that
Totally.
as that's a high priority, right? I want to show up in the world as a good person, whatever that means, even though that's probably a dumb word. Good. It's like, what does that mean?
Right. It's kind of a benign word.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like, how about my whole self? How about my honest self, my genuine self? But what the other part of this was for me, and I feel like you have this too, with Laird isn't questioning his own intentions. He is really clear about his intentions. So he's not trying to prove to anybody like, hey, I'm a good guy. It's like, yeah. I know I'm an honest person. I'm trying to work hard. If I make mistakes, I say sorry. And boom, straight ahead. And I feel like you have that. Like you're not questioning, how, where am I at? So I think what happens to a lot of us is this coming from the right place?
Yeah.
So you seem to have lined that up. So when someone is really super direct with you, and maybe it's even, I won't say a criticism, but maybe something where it's like, hey, we got to address this. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, that's why I really like Laird, and I like you too because I feel you're direct too.
I am. It's
you
taken
are.
me a long time to be as even my full directness, but absolutely.
Because I not only do I appreciate people who are direct, I actually prefer it, and I gravitate toward it because I'm not interested in trying to navigate the waters of what someone's trying to say and what they really mean, and then hiding behind this and pretending to do that and saying one thing and meaning another. I prefer people who, do what they say what they do, and mean what they're saying. And I don't get offended by the nuance of it all, right? And I know, and I think a lot of women especially get so offended so easily if you look at them the wrong way, if you say the wrong thing. That's never been me. It's not my personality. And I try to tell people all the time, like friends of mine, women, whatever, it's like you're getting caught up in the minutia that's so unimportant.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's noise. And if they can focus on the things that actually are important and not this minutia, it saves a lot of time.
Energy.
It's the energy.
Yeah.
And so I've learned to be comfortable with the fact that some people are going to be okay with it and some people aren't. And then that's not my tribe and my people. And that's fine. But I'm not going to live my life tippy-toeing and acting a certain way and saying something and trying to navigate what that person means. And to your point with Laird, it's I know I'm a good person. If I have to prove that to you, then this is not the right dynamic in the first place,
This podcast is brought to you by Fatty 15. So it ends up that many of us are deficient in C15, and this can result in weaker cells that make less energy, and they quit working earlier than they should. And all of that makes us age faster. We sleep poorly, we feel sluggish. I don't know if any of that is sounding familiar to you. Well, this is exciting because Fatty 15 is made from a patented, pure, and oxidative-resistant C15 powder, and it's derived from plants. So it's vegan-friendly, it's free of flavors, fillers, allergens, and even preservatives. C15 is literally the only ingredient in Fatty 15, so it's 100% pure. C15 works in multiple ways. It repairs age-related damage to cells, and it protects them from future breakdown. It boosts mitochondrial energy output and activates pathways in the body that help regulate things like our sleep and our mood, which obviously we know are so heavily connected, and natural repair mechanisms that support our overall health. This functionality leads to a myriad of exciting benefits now and as we get older. namely improved metabolic, liver, and heart health, smoother functioning joints. I need that so badly. Deeper sleep and healthier hair, skin, and nails. Who doesn't love that? I've personally been taking Fatty 15 for a few years now, and they have a great offer. Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish your C15 levels and restore your long-term health. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit. All you have to do is go to fatty15.com/Gabby, and don't forget to use the code Gabby at checkout. That's fatty15.com/Gabby, fatty15.com/Gabby, Gabby. How do you dance? And this is really because I want to know, is when you're working, there's an agenda. Like when I'm working, I'm trying to accomplish certain things, get certain things. So within it, there's sort of this built-in agenda, right? Yeah. So I'm always trying to dance between being pure intentioned and having to navigate the agenda, right? So it's like this, sometimes for me, it's this dance because it's like, no, I need this or I want this. So I almost want to reveal that to everybody up front. Like, let's say I have a friend that I have a business idea for. I would say, hey, can I call you about a business idea and set a meeting? I would never do it if we were at a dinner party. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're picking your time and place.
And I'm also trying to be super transparent. Like, no, I have an agenda.
Yeah.
Not everything is transactional. So that was the way that I learned how to separate those things so that if people saw me and knew me, they knew if I was like, hey, how's it going? And we're here in a social environment, that's all I'm going to do.
Right. Well, that's kind of like reading the room, right? Like that's more of a thing where that comes into like the EQ, right? Like, do people have enough EQ, emotional intelligence to know when is the right time? Now, I believe that being bold, it gives this like idea that you're like a bull in a china shop, but it's right. Like you're always like, blah, 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 but it's really not. It's more about being intentional and going after what you want or asking for what you want. But there's another side to this, which is having the wherewithal to know the time and place. Yeah. And that goes into a whole other area, which I talk about in this like likability area, because I did this whole thing. I did a TED talk on being bold. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that one. I did. And it went viral and I had like 1,000,000 comments on it and people sending me messages and talking to all these companies about it. And I would always get this thing about like, well, being bold, does it mean this? Or like, what happens if you're like a bull in a china shop or what? Like, and then I had to, like, I took a moment at Beat and I'm like, over the last couple years, actually. And I thought like, yeah, you can't just be bold and not have any other like human skill or else it could come off brash. So what is that other element that's necessary? Mm-hmm. And the truth is, what I've come up with is this idea that you have to be likable enough where then you could get away with being bold, right? Yeah. And part of that is like reading the room, building some kind of connecting point with somebody. And then it's easier to ask for what you want, right? So if I was to go, to the hotel, for example, in the front desk and ask for that room, if I was an asshole before when I walked in and like was rude and dismissive and arrogant, and then I'm like, hey, what are the chances I can get an upgrade? Yeah. Most likely, or chances are, probably not that very high. But if I was super friendly and kind and asked how their day was going and kind of like noticed that they were wearing a shirt that I liked and gave them a genuine compliment, chances are that my chances of getting that upgrade are going to go much higher now, right? Yeah. So I do believe there is a strong correlation between likability and then being bold. Yeah. Without the likability factor, being bold will get you only so far.
And I'll add to that. I feel really comfortable when I know somewhere in this, there's some version of a win-win. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm checking into a hotel, that's kind of like what they're doing. Right. Like, that's a bad example. Meaning, it's like their job. But let's say I needed something from you. There would be some way that I know I'd be trying to create a dynamic where you were going to win too.
Yes.
And I feel that makes this idea of being bold, because then also it can be a reoccurring.
100%.
Well,
that's relationship building,
yes.
Right? So I think that relationships are like fundamental, right? Foundational to all of this. And in my approach, I believe, and I do this all the time, I always lead with how I can help you, how I can benefit you. Like, I don't like to do an ask of something unless I'm able to give something first, right?
Yeah.
Or at least have the ability to give first, right? Because you never want the relationship to feel lopsided or that you are just like being an opportunist, right?
Yeah.
Especially as you get more successful and it becomes bigger stakes, right? And I think that's an art. I think the art of creating relationships, the art of business, the art of negotiating, the art of getting what you want. There has to be on the other side that ability to kind of have, I really believe, the self-awareness and the EQ to figure out and finagle a way that the other person feels that they're going to win or win at that moment.
Yeah, I think that notion of reciprocity for me is really valuable.
Yeah.
And I felt that in your talk. So you've been sort of on the bold train, and it feels like you maybe out of that, and then we're always inspired by what's also going on in our real lives. And so you have 2 children, young children. I mean, but not that young, 10 and 12. Right. And it's also observing them, the generation that they're in, what they're going through, what they're navigating, their phones, their social, comments on everything, just all of it. And so you see a lot of people talking about resiliency, not only for adults, certainly, but now how do we get our kids kind of mettled up to go out in this world? Because there is also kind of a self-indulgence with, every kid is like, I feel this and I have that. And your house cares about that. The world really doesn't. And so, now you've really put together a message about some of the things that parents and maybe educators or, aunties and uncles, be it, borrowed or blood,
right,
can help these kids, because it's going to be essential.
Yeah, and I never touted myself. I'm hardly a parenting expert. The only expertise I have is parenting my own kids, right? But I am an observer of many other parents and children. And quite honestly, fortunately, because of my podcast, I've been able to speak to like the top experts in the world, just as you have, right? And my takeaway from all of that is the fact that we're so hyper focused on mental performance and mental resilience and mental toughness for adults, but we are losing the battle with mental performance, toughness, resilience for kids. And if you want to have a mentally resilient, mentally strong adult, why are we waiting until they're adults? Why don't we start when they're kids, young adults, right? And teach them the habits and the coping skills and mechanisms to then go on and be mentally strong, to be resilient when they're adults. Like, why are we waiting? Like, this is, you learn these things like at a young age. Like these things stay with you forever. Yeah. Like, start instilling these daily habits now. And what I've noticed is like, we're in a coddle culture world.
You're younger than I am, but what happened between when you and I were growing up and everybody older than us, like, okay, go outside and play till dark. We know what happened there. The phone. Oh, even the joke was kids should be seen and not heard. Like, oh, your feelings, Feel
your feelings? You mean that?
No, now? Like, no. Back then it was like, yeah, right. And exactly. And there was a lot of actually almost benign neglect, right? So the overcorrection has been, let me try to, and I suffer it differently, but like accommodate every need and, sort of do all that. I don't know exactly what happened. Let your anger out. Instead of, there comes a point where it's like, yeah, no, that behavior you need to stop now.
Right.
Right. So It is fascinating to me. And certain states, maybe it's less and more, certain towns, certain cities. Los Angeles, probably there's a ton of it. So where does it start?
I love it you just said that. I think that's the overcorrecting of it is because in my generation, it was about actually more independence. We would play outside. My dad would give me this game called, when I said, I'm bored, he said, go play spit and catch. And I would spit in the air basically, and then try to catch it. That was my big game to be when I was bored. But and then I know it's disgusting, but the truth is, like, it would always lead me to find something else to do on my own, right? Which was important. Like, I believe that being bored is super important for
creativity.
Kids. Right. That's where creativity lives, right? And like when you have to figure things out on your own and not be overscheduled, like as a parent, right? That is a big thing that we do. We're so nervous that our kids are going to be bored for 4.5 seconds, that they have 11 different, activities to do, and they're scheduled every hour on the hour. And there's actually no time for just like free play. And I'm not talking like screen, like be on your iPad.
No, you mean,
I'm talking figuring it out on your own, going in the backyard, looking for something, an adventure, finding a friend to go bike riding and get yourself into trouble. Like kids have, right? Like there's a big value in kids getting in trouble and having to like figure out a way out of it. And we've just lost that as a culture right now, right? Like we just don't allow that. Everything is that you have to know the whereabouts of your child 24/7. Chances are your kid's on an iPad, unfortunately. So there's two parts to this. The first part to your question is what changed? The fact that screens became a big deal. Like screens, smartphones, all that time where you would spend like in free play, outside, biking, and getting yourself in trouble has now been replaced with Instagram and TikTok and video games and just screen time and iPads and iPhones. That's basically what's happened.
Okay, so I'll play the other side for a second because I've had this thrown at me. So our kids are going to grow up in a different world. Their jobs are going to be different.
That's true.
Biology aside, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just bringing it up.
No, I agree. Yep.
Biology aside, like playing all these things that are essential to our biology, which hasn't changed. But let's say that the argument could be from a 35-year-old parent, because they're sort of the one in the sweet spot.
Yep.
Well, hey, they better know how to, because their whole life is going to be revolved around this.
So I have a great argument for that.
I want it because I'll use it the next time somebody uses it on me.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you. So I mean, people say that to me all the time.
They do?
All the time.
It's so ridiculous, though.
To me, it's the most absurd thing. Like, it's the most moronic thing that someone can say. What are they learning scrolling Instagram and comparing themselves to Tom, Dick, or Harry? That's the first thing. Or were they learning from like Snapchat? They're learning nothing. Okay, that's not AI. Okay, let's call it what it is. It's basically just a time suck. And by the way, it happens to adults too. Like I can catch myself on TikTok, and I look down. It's 45 minutes later of me watching the most benign, stupid videos of Bethany Frankel because she's on there 100 times a day, right? Like, sorry, Bethany, but that's what it is. I mean, it's not bettering my world or my brain.
You're not talking about the tools of technology. You're talking about the distraction.
Right. They're not learning AI on there. Okay. But what I will say, what I feel is the big problem with how much time they spend on that is that they are not learning social skills. They're not learning how to socialize. They're not even dating anymore.
Teenagers are not having sex.
They're not having sex anymore. I was going to say, they're not even having sex anymore.
I know.
They're getting their dopamine hit from a like or from something that's something that's social media. So to me, no matter what job you have in life, forget about let's actually say forget about the jobs. How about just personally? If you want to have a relationship that's fulfilling and happy and loving, where are you going to learn the skills but if you're not practicing them in real time? So to me, when all that time we spent outside doing whatever we're doing and all our adventures, yeah, that's fine and good. But what it's also teaching us is how to like interact with another individual, how to like, if we have like an argument, how do we resolve the argument? Like it's teaching you foundational, fundamental life skills. You're not getting those life skills by scrolling Instagram. You only get those life skills by being in real time. People now, I'm sure you've heard the stats of how 26% of Gen Z are bringing their parents to a job interview because they are afraid to go by themselves. Yeah. Like these are crazy numbers. Or how anxiety and depression and suicide has skyrocketed since all these screens have been like basically a part of our lives. So like you can tell me that these jobs, yes, they're going to have more jobs that require you to know social media and AI and, technology and all these things, but nothing will ever take the place of understanding and being good at socializing and human interaction, which has become a completely void thing now.
Yeah. So maybe it's like, hey, listen, you can't have it bleed in continuously. It's like, this is your time on your screen, get off. Or if you do want to learn about what's the latest AI, because it does change every other day for real.
Yeah, for real.
Then you can work at that almost like a student, which is fine. Like spend time doing that so you don't get left behind. I will confess, and I've said this many times on the show, I haven't figured any of this out. I just want to, I want to say it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
You've met my younger two daughters. It seems that there's another one, but it seems that the older two escaped it. It's the youngest one.
Right.
But she still has enough balance, but it bit her more than the others. And I can see like the agitation, the ability to concentrate. No, let's hash it out. Good communicator, good to resolve, but it's just, you can see just how it makes them like, let's get to it. And I want to like, what are your thoughts and feelings?
Right. Instant gratification.
It's constant. Like it's just a lot ramped up. So I want to say I'm having this conversation from a place as a parent that I myself am navigating all the time. I don't take, the phone away. It's like, hey, now she's a senior in high school. She's going to be going off to college. It's like, you're going to have to figure out also, like we're going to figure out how you can manage this. But then the other side of it, it's addiction. Like I wouldn't give my kids cocaine.
Exactly.
But yet I've given them phones.
See, the problem is I think that parents these days, and by the way, let me say that too, like this is a work in progress, right? Like I'm not saying like I have all the answers.
Do you have rules in your house?
I was going to say I have non-negotiables in my house.
What are they?
So you have a certain amount of time you're allowed to be on the phone. Okay. I mean, actually, let me back up. I will not give my kids a smartphone. So that's a whole other argument.
Great.
So my son, who's 12, all his friends have a smartphone, and I refused to give him one. What I did give him, because for safety, I gave him one of these flip phones that he can text me or he can call me, but there's no Wi-Fi, there's no internet on there, there's no Instagram, there's nothing. It's just an ability for me to know where he is or where he can call me.
Yeah.
Period. Now, was he happy about it? No. But my job is not to make my kid happy, is to make him safe and strong and to be like a functioning person in society. And if I could kind of keep him away from that stuff as long as I possibly can, the better. The other thing I was going to...
Has he come up with a workaround himself?
No, I mean, what's funny? He gives, it's a whole thing all the time. And he's kind of acquiesced a little bit. Like, do I think that like he's probably on his friends' phones and he's like watching over their shoulder? Probably.
Yeah, sure. Well,
of course.
But it's not in his bedroom.
But it's not like in his bedroom. It's not with them 24/7. And like, again, like I think that another big problem that I notice a lot is that parents want to be their kids' best friends. They don't want to be their parents. Mm-hmm. And it's actually more important for their kid to like them than it is to actually anything else, like them to actually parent them.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that skill as well as a parent. And we are working, so it's easier. It's easier to be like, just go on your phone and leave me alone. It's like it's lazy parenting, in my opinion. Like I don't even like when parents are blaming, Facebook and Instagram and these apps, like, oh, it's their fault that my kid is depressed and anxious. It's their fault. It's not their fault. They're a company. Their job is to get your kid and you addicted and to make money off of you. That's their job.
Yeah.
They didn't enroll in this is not a parenting school. If you want your kid not to do something, the onus is on you to take that responsibility and teach your kid or just say no. Like, we've lost that ability as a parent to be like, no, you're not doing that. And then, stick with it. A lot of people, they don't want to say no because they don't want the kid to hate them.
Yeah.
Or they'll say no and then they'll like kind of acquiesce and like, fine, you can do it because it's easier.
So what do you do like when you're battling him for this and you say no and he stomps out? What's your self-talk as his mom? What do you?
Well, it's funny. So, this is, again, like that's what I'm saying. This is a work in progress. I mean, there's a lot of areas that I can be really strong with.
Yeah.
But one area that breaks me is when my kid doesn't like me. So I understand this.
Yeah.
My self-talk is I basically remind myself that I'm not doing this for now. It's delayed gratification. It's the idea that it's not going to be beneficial for me right now, how my kid looks at me and if he likes me or doesn't like me. But the benefit will hopefully be 10 years down the road, God willing, or when he, later on. Like, I don't need my kid to love me right now all the time. And I'm okay with it, but I have to remind myself that I'm okay with it. Cause I don't like it. I mean, it bothers me too. Like, he's my boy. He's like, Like, I'm a Jewish mom, for God's sakes. Like, this kid is like my life, but it's so hard. But I have to remind myself that it's so important because I see what's happening. Like, I've seen the decline in athleticism from these kids, even including my own kid, when they're now they're all playing these these video games. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, boys game more, girls get crushed by the social media.
Right.
More.
Girls get crushed by the comparison game on social media.
Yeah. Boys, it's the gaming.
Boys, it's the gaming with all their friends.
They say, okay, so there is, again, we're just having a full conversation about it. There is conversations around that some of the gaming, obviously if it doesn't take over your whole day and you're not peeing in a bag because you can't get up, but that there's a cooperation, there's a social aspect to gaming.
Yeah.
So there has been sort of some ideas around that. It's the girls who get hammered more with social media.
By the way, the boys are getting hammered on social media because they are comparing themselves. Like, they're comparing the muscles and this money,
the cars,
the wealth, also like muscles. Like, I'm seeing like—
You said muscles twice.
I said muscles because I see my kid like flexing in the mirror. I'm like, who's he comparing himself to? He's seeing something somewhere, maybe YouTube. But I think that's like normal for that age group.
Sure. Yeah.
But still, like, when we were younger, it was that we didn't have it like thrown in our face. Every single person who's better looking than us and
the whole world,
fitter than us.
The whole world, right.
Like, we had like a couple. I mean, meanwhile, you were like the pinnacle. I would look at you.
Oh, sure. Because when I was 12 and I was 6 feet tall, it was going really good for me.
I'm sure when you were exactly. I was going to say,
come on.
When you were 12, I'm sure it didn't go so well.
It was so great.
But it worked out. Delayed gratification. It worked for you later.
Yeah. Yes, of course. It can work out for all of us later because growing up is already an uncomfortable thing.
It is.
So you put a couple guardrails. So you say, okay, right now, let's say someone's listening to this and they go, listen, sorry, I've already blown it. My kid has a smartphone. Where do we go from here?
Give them. It's never too late. You can put all sorts of different things on that phone to make sure they have times on. Like, I have a thing where on their iPad, I get like a time thing. They're allowed screen time for, let's say, an hour. I'm making it up, right? Yeah. So that it will pop up on my phone. Okay, your kid hit an hour, take it away, or it automatically shuts off. So you can create these different, right?
Have you ever tried to take a device away from a kid?
Trust me, that's a whole other thing.
It's like crack.
That is like crack.
No, it is.
But then you can, I know. But you can then you can at least create these like guardrails, like you said, where like, okay, you have a 45 minutes, then the thing stops or whatever. You do that. I also give my kids chores. I say, you have things to do in the house. You're not gonna, if you're gonna live here, I want you to contribute and participate at a small level. Like, I'm not telling them to go and pay for the mortgage, but
Yeah.
take out the garbage
Yeah.
and do the dishes. Like I'll give them small little things where they start to kind of, they start to feel a responsibility. And then they know that like, hey, by the way, that responsibility gives them a lot of self-esteem, right?
does.
Because they do it and they're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this again. Like they feel like they're like the big man on campus.
Yeah.
So they complain sometimes, but at the end of the day, like they end up as usual, like they end up getting into a routine, a ritual where they know, okay, it's Wednesday. I got to take out the garbage before 8:00 or, dinner time. I got to put the dishes in the dishwasher. So I create these little things where that happens. The other thing is because I'm so busy and my husband's busy, we're both entrepreneurs. We try to make it where we at least have dinner with our kids, let's say 3 nights or 2 nights a week, where we have that ability to kind of have conversation and interaction and find out what's going on and like create places where you can have real conversation with your children, not in front of a television.
Yeah.
Right? So like these are like small little things that mean really nothing bit by bit, but accumulate it.
Yes.
It makes even if it makes a % difference, at least it's something.
Yeah.
Right? No one's perfect. Right?
That's the thing. And I think we feel like we're supposed to be perfect. And when we're not, we're afraid to say, I need help. I need new tools because we feel like it'd be hard to confess that we're not perfect.
Right.
And in fact, before we came in here, you said, hey, listen, I'm always navigating being an entrepreneur, being really busy and being there for my kids. A lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
A lot. So do you have conversations with them about, hey, listen, this week, for example, is going to be a little extra bumpy and rough for me and busy. I may not make that game or I won't be at dinner Wednesday, but I wanted to let you know what was happening. And like, how do you bridge those gaps? Because
that's a great question.
Because it's ongoing.
So that's a great question. So you're right, because I think that is something that I deal with a lot. I think a lot of working moms deal with that, the guilt, the constant guilt. And so I had this constant guilt. And then on top of that, when I'm trying to be somewhat of a disciplinarian, right? The combination then, it's even more gut wrenching, right? Because when you're not able to be around as much as you want, and then you are trying to discipline your child, they're going to hate you.
Yeah, where's the good stuff?
There's no, exactly.
Right.
I get stuck with all the crap, by the way. My husband's a fun one, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's all I think a lot of people will relate to that, or maybe not, I don't know. But I would say the truth of the matter is I kind of tell my kids all the time, I'm human. I'm doing the best I can. I don't have all the answers. And I think honesty, again, is always the best policy. Like I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not trying to be, win any parenting of the year award. And I say that I'm like, I'm just doing I've only been a parent once. This is it right now when you were 12 or 10. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to be there. I do try, though, genuinely to be involved in all the things that are important. Like my daughter's she's a competitive dancer. Oh. Okay. Have you ever been? That's
intense.
This is a whole other podcast. It's beyond. And
how are those moms?
That's fun. That's fun. And they have these weekends away where they do these 3-day conventions and competitions, which, by the way, for my schedule is probably the worst thing you can do. Right. Yeah. And I have another kid at home. And I've been trying to figure out and finagle my kid to be out of that stuff. But it's like, of course, this is actually Murphy's Law, right? It's because I am the antithesis of that person that this is happening to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's your lesson.
That's my lesson. Yeah, it really is.
That's right.
And I know how important it is to my kid. So I will make adjustments other places to at least go to those things. I will go kicking and screaming, and I do not want to go. And if anyone's watching it who own the dance, who own it, I'm sorry. Yeah. They probably know it anyway. But I think if you want to be a parent, you have to make modifications. It's just what it is, right? Like, then don't have kids, right?
There it is. When people
that don't have kids.
Yeah, like, the time, it's like, well, what'd you think it was going to be?
Yeah.
It's like when you have babies and people are surprised they don't have sleep. I'm like, nobody warned, like, no, you didn't hear from anywhere that you weren't going to sleep for a couple years. Like nobody whispered that to you.
Exactly. And all these years, I think that that's just the reality. It's like, like we become parents, and the truth of the matter is probably a lot of people shouldn't be parents, right? Because they can't, they don't know how to navigate it. I don't know how to navigate it, but at least I know I have a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to put hours into my work life, how do I not put hours into my parenting life when I made that commitment? And it's not fair to the kid. Right? Like, I don't want to make my kid feel like they're the obligation, or like they're like kind of an annoyance in my life. Right. That's the other problem. So that's what I was saying to you before this podcast. It's like, you have to kind of be mindful of all these things. And that is why it's so difficult to be a working parent, who has a really busy career. There's a lot of choices that you have to make. And a lot of those choices are not maybe something that you would have wanted to do, but that's your role as a parent. Like, you're going to have to give and take at something.
Yeah. And I think people sometimes don't realize the value of your kids seeing you do. There's also that part. Mm-hmm. You're teaching your kid, like, hey, things are hard. And when I fail, I'll get back up and try again. Or if I want to have that meeting, even though I'm uncomfortable, I'll make the call. And you're teaching them these other skills that they'll take with them. When we were talking about resilience, what kind of framework? So we talked about the phone a little bit, chores, you share like, hey, you got to let them fail.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one. I think because, again, I think that what I've really kind of was talking to was the fact that I think this generation has become much more fragile and soft. And I don't think it behooves them in any way, shape, or form for later on down the road. And that means that when, you're like, allow your kid to fail, which means you don't have to do their homework. Right?
Yeah. Let them go deal with the teacher and not hand it in homework.
Right. You don't have to fight the battle with every kid that is not getting along with your kid. Let them figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
Don't scream at the coach because, your kid is being benched. That's what's happening. Like, kids are now, if a kid's not playing the number one position, it's the coach's fault. And now, and the coaches are getting bullied by the parents. And to me, it's like, well, no, if you're there are going to be in life, and you know this better than anybody. You're like a professional athlete. Like, there are going to be people who are better. Yeah. And the people who are not as good. Yeah. And there's going to be in life winners and losers.
Yeah. Or it's just not your thing. By the way, sometimes that's a great lesson. You go onto a team, you're not that good. Guess what? It's not your thing.
It's not your thing.
Find another thing.
Well, exactly. And I'm going to turn it around. Like, you're someone who was like top of your game, right? Yeah. How many hours did you practice?
A lot. If you want to ask me if I push my kids into sports, I did not.
Right. Why?
Because I know.
Right.
I know you better love it, and it better be your thing, and it'll find you, and you'll find it if it really is. And just because it was my success language, I had to really restrain myself. So, for example, you'll have academic parents, doctors, lawyers, these are our success languages. You don't know. Or they're unfulfilled athletes, so they'll live vicariously through their kids. It's like, listen, your kid has no shot.
Exactly.
Like, get over it. Let them learn the hard lessons of discipline and working hard and huffing and puffing and cooperation, winning and losing. That's what sport is for. It's not really meant to be a professional athlete. What you get from sport, you get if you sort of by high school. The real thing.
Totally agree with you.
So I think it's understanding you're not going to will them to it. The other thing I think is unfair that we do to our kids simultaneously, like, okay, we're trying to fix it all, not let them fail. But then in some way, you alluded to it earlier, we've overstacked them because we don't want them to get behind. It's like, behind of what? And I think that this is a pill a lot of parents are swallowing, is like, they have to do all these activities. They have to get into these schools. It's like, that is no indication of long-term success, and how we have all bit this hook on like, oh, they got to do this, this, and this. It's like, maybe they don't.
It's really funny. I think I don't think I've ever talked about this like on a podcast, but I live in a very competitive environment, right? With like the people around me, like it's like high performers and high performance and all this stuff. And also just societal, right? A lot of very successful people, private equity, whatever it is, right? And I see the rat race that's happening with their kids they're all vying to get into these Ivy Leagues, and they're all going to all the private schools like Harvard Westlake and this one and that one. And they're trying.
You mean where kids are killing themselves?
Literally, the suicide rate at Harvard Westlake is, this is crazy. And this is one area where I'm just not competitive. I don't care because I've seen the stats. I know for myself, I'm a perfect example of this, is that I was a shitty student and I'm way more successful than 90% of these people who are killing their kids but if they get like a B, not an A. And what I just don't understand is like in life, the people who do become the most successful were never those A+ students. They were not the ones who only went to the best private school, who had the 15 tutors and who did this academically. Like it was
social,
like
you talk about it, social skills. Your podcast is called Hustle and Habits.
Habits and Hustle.
I'm sorry, Habits and Hustle.
Close.
You have to have some hustle, no matter who you are. You have to build scaffolding habits. So I think we're focused on the wrong values. How about, first of all, get to know who you are, yourself. Your kids I'm sure are different. You just met my girls. They couldn't be more different in certain ways, like completely different. And it's like, who are you? What way do you want to bring forth yourself into the world?
Totally.
What does that look like? And why do we not encourage kids to sort of take that time and see the value in, oh, you know what? I'm really creative, or I'm really diverse, or no, you know what? I'm a linear person. I want to like hit marks and, cross off the checklist and just hammer down and do all these things and sort of say, okay, bring forth these gifts to the world. Now it's like, oh, you have to go to this school and do all these things and hit those marks, and great, you're just like everybody else.
I only think I agree. Then now you're just like another number or another cog in the wheel. And the thing is, there's so many different types of intelligence, right? You could be academically intelligent, but be completely a moron in street smarts, or have zero EQ, emotional intelligence, which I do talk about a lot.
We see a lot of people like that.
We see a ton. And to me, you know what makes somebody successful? If street smarts, I think is way more important. Having a really high EQ and also having the ability to be resourceful, trying to figure stuff out. And that is literally why I wanted to do even that talk, because that's what I feel, if I was really getting down to the like root of the problem, is people are lacking that resourcefulness. Like, okay, I wasn't able to do that. I can't figure that out. Okay, how do I do that? Let me figure out let me see if I can do it this way, not that way. Or if I went through the window, not the door. Like having the skill and the ability to be resourceful and figure things out when you haven't figured it out yet, best trait. And knowing that, and I'm not a great student, but guess what? I'm going to be really good and dominate in my, social intelligence, my emotional intelligence, my self-awareness, because it's all about that. Like you're going to get a good job because someone likes you and they're going to give you a shot, not because you had, the best GPA and you had the best marks, because I think academics, talent will get you so far, but how you really like go through the finish line is if someone likes you enough to give you a shot at something. Yeah,
and you can solve problems. And even, the story of Habits and Hustle was meant you wanted that to be a TV show.
Yeah.
And you pivoted and you made it a podcast.
Yeah.
And then it opened up, I'm sure, opportunities and things that would have never happened. So
how did you know that?
I do my homework.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's really understanding for people to understand. One thing I'm really grateful for is I did not really grow up so much on the continental United States, right? I grew up in the Caribbean. Laird grew up in Hawaii. Laird left 11th grade pieced out, right? I went to college to play volleyball.
Yeah.
Come on. Let's call it what it is, right? So we've never felt the pressure to be in the system. And so it's also what this resilience conversation though is also trying to give parents the permission to go, we're all kind of in a system that we don't really have to be in. Give yourself permission to say, I'm going to run my own race. Not only as an individual, but as a family. Mm-hmm. We're going to run our own race. Who are my kids? What are the environments? And some other things that you really, you talk about, we talked about not being overprotective, but even teaching them like to ask, like not fix it for them, but teaching your children, like, you want something, just go ahead and ask.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And you know what it is though? I think with families, people don't have, it takes bravery and courage to be able to to kind of do your own path, right? People get really stuck in what their neighbor, what their friends are doing, what their family members are doing. And it takes you down this really sad path of like unhappiness, right? Yeah. Because now you're just keeping up with the Joneses as opposed to just kind of trailblazing your own thing. And that's where real true happiness and fulfillment comes. Yeah. But it takes a lot of courage to do that.
But let me ask you something, because we've done this a few times for different ways. Every time you're running in a race that you think, I don't believe in this race. This isn't even my race. I got to do my own thing. And you stop, even in friendships. Like, hey, this is not good for me. And you pull out of it. You're out. The next day you wake up and you think, that's not that hard. Like, why? What is it in me that I believed that I was supposed to do that and I had to do that? Why didn't I just pull up a long time ago and say, hey, I'm out of this?
That's true.
And it's so interesting. People don't realize, yes, it is hard. Mm-hmm. But the minute you do it, you're like, oh, I'm so free. And it doesn't mean you're not going to bust your ass, but you want to bust your ass at the things that you're like, yeah, I understand why I'm doing this.
You know what? I think that's such a great point. And I also think it's like this idea of being ostracized from your community. Yeah. And I don't abide by that. I don't. But I see it, and it's very much a part of especially in my culture, right? Like it's, if you're doing something different than everybody else, then something's wrong with you. And you become literally ostracized. And I think that's where people get really stuck. And then they look back and 20 years go by and they have not lived their best life, right? They haven't chased anything that they really wanted. They've just kind of done what they were supposed to do, which is really sad if you think about it. Yeah. Right?
Well, and I think nothing really smells better than someone who doesn't care.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, hey, I'm going to do my thing. And if everyone goes, it's like, you don't have to be a part of that. And you will find other people that get you and say like, oh yeah, cool, great, let's go. So I think it's, what I found in all your messaging. So from the bold and you saying, hey, listen, this is a skill, it's not a trait, to circling back up to the resilience of, encouraging curiosity. How do you encourage curiosity, by the way, in your kids? How does that show up?
So it's funny you ask me that, because both of them are very curious. Okay. Naturally. Good. And I think it's interesting. You know how I think that this is what I believe. I believe that you're born either curious or not. You can work on being curious, but you can't become a 10. You maybe can move your curiosity dial from like a 2 to a 5 by practicing. And this is what I mean by that. It's like I think everything in life you can get a little bit better by practice. You can get a little bit better being bold by practicing. Mm-hmm. You can get you can get more fit by practicing. Everything you can get better at. Are you going to become like an Olympic champion? Right. Maybe not, but that's okay. But if at least you can just elevate from where you were, that's the goal. So I think the way you get better at curiosity is a couple things. You just start asking people more questions that are genuine. Like, it doesn't have to be these intellectual brainy questions, but hey, if whatever's coming to your brain, oh, I do like that shirt. Where'd you get it? Yeah. Or find things that you actually do have interest in, and then maybe just dive a little deeper. Right? And
so if I came to your house, would your kids be comfortable asking me questions?
Oh, they would probably
are your parents tall, or would they do all that?
Yeah, it's really, I think so. Yeah. I think they would be asking. Well, I think my little one would for sure. I think I think that what happens is they're both really curious, but what happens is now with like them being a little older, my boy,
Self-conscious.
a little more self-conscious about it. They don't want to be rude.
They'll come back to it though.
Yeah, they'll ask me when you leave.
Yeah,
like, what, was her dad really tall? Or is she a basketball player? You know, like all those things.
Yeah.
But they won't maybe ask you to your face.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
love that. You know, I appreciate this message because I feel like this is a reflection of, now that we have overcorrected, I think enough of us are saying like, hey, we've really got to support these kids in a real way. And so I want to just ask you, because Laird and I talk about this a lot. Are there times that you've ever had to manufacture some kind of adversity? Because, you know, the joke is, I used to joke with my girls because sometimes they don't get along. And I go, listen, if your dad was like a raging alcoholic and beat me, the two of you would be like a consolidated front. But because everything's kind of cool here,
So true, that's
like
right.
you guys get the luxury to be like meh, 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 on each other. I go, you guys would be like this. And so Laird and I joke about like,
hilarious.
how could we make it worse or harder for them? And we realized, you know, that's probably not going to be the case. But I was wondering if you had any tricks or secrets.
That's so hilarious. And you know what? I have this talk all the time because you're right. Like you can't. It's hard to create adversity when there is none.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of like, I think that's like a legitimate problem, right? For some people. It's like, well, you have everything you want to give. It's like, you can't, what are you going to like tell your kids to like sleep in the shed in the back?
No dinner tonight. You know?
Exactly. Like, you know, like go kill your, go hunt your own dinner.
Yeah.
I think that like, there's a beauty though into like being like, this is what your situation is. And I don't think you have to like create hardship, but what you have to do is be cognizant of what your scenario is and don't make it overly easy by like doing the small things or things that you think are the small things, right? Like you don't have, like, maybe that's when like you don't have to, like, you know, like let them don't do their homework or don't get the nanny to do their homework or like, right? Things like that. Like, I think there's something to be said for also being a loving parent and being honest with where you are.
Yeah.
Like some kids, like maybe they do, like maybe they have every luxury. Okay, so maybe that's not your problem, but maybe there's other things that you can be working on.
Yeah.
Right? I think like, why can't the kids still do some chores?
Yeah.
Right? Just because you have a lot, like this is what I say to my kids. I'm like, anything, my money is not your money. You didn't earn it. I earned it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's on you now. Like you can see how you could live. Like you're just living in my house now.
Yeah.
You know, but that doesn't mean that this is yours. Not to say like I'm a gazillionaire because I'm really not. But
no, but just
what I'm saying is
course.
it's like what I always tell my kids is like, if you want to make money to buy, you know, go to the mall and have spending money. I said this to my kid the other day, and he has a little business. He like washes cars, and him and his friends sell candy that they're not supposed to at the school, and all sorts of like things illegal that they're not supposed to be doing. But that's
a hustle.
Him. It's a hustle.
Hey, listen,
and
listen
I
to your
appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
By the way, him and his friend, like they go to Smart and Final.
Yeah.
They buy a bunch of candy, and they go and sell it to the kids, the sixth graders.
That's resourceful.
It's 100%. They're not allowed to be doing it.
They got busted?
Well, they said if we get caught, we're gonna get in trouble. I'm like, that's okay. Get in trouble. I'm fine with it. I'm not telling him to stop.
Yeah, I like it.
I like it too.
Yeah.
And so now they're gonna go do a lemonade stand on the weekend. So there's things that you can do to show them about work ethic. Yeah. Right. I'm not asking them to go eat what they, kill what they eat.
Well,
and
they're
all
not
those
stealing.
Things. They're not.
They're
stealing.
hustling.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer of hustling. So all the power to them.
Yeah. Is there anything, because someone would see you and be like, Jen seems pretty fearless. Is there things that, you're still navigating that intimidate you or scare you that you still go, okay, but I'm going to lean into that?
Well, by the way, that's the funny that you say that because I'm fearful of everything. And I've like literally, because I am so fearful of so many things, I've like made it a conscious effort to do things even when I don't want to. So I always say like, do it even when you don't want to. I don't focus on how I'm going to feel now or how I feel now. I focus on how I'm going to feel after the fact. A great example is when I first met you many, many years ago, not that many, but many, I had to do that cold plunge for the first time. Do you remember?
I do.
And I freaked out like a baby. I was so scared to be in there for like 2 seconds. but I did it. Peer pressure, but besides that, no kidding. But kind of, yes. But because I was so scared of it, I did it, and over time I got better at it. Did I become a professional? Right. No, but I was able to go at least from like 0 to like 2.5, 3 minutes, right? With time and practice. So with me, it's like, I am afraid of a lot of things. I don't like to do a lot of things. And that's why I actually do those hard things, because I know that I will feel better afterwards if I follow through and try. So that's my self-talk around that. And that's literally with everything in life. I hate public speaking. It was like my biggest fear. I literally hate it. And that is why I've done one TED Talk, and then I did another TED Talk. And it's literally like the things that you are fearful the most are the things that present themselves to you sometimes.
Yeah.
And for, with the TED Talk, the first one especially, I was actually approached by them. I didn't approach them. I didn't submit or anything. And I actually said no because I was so scared.
Yeah.
And over time, then over a couple of weeks, I was like, what am I this is like a TED Talk. Why would I not do something that is like such a thing that like everybody wants to do? And I'm not going to do it because I'm scared. And I got so angry with myself. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it because of that. And I ended up doing it, the first one, and did so well that, of course it's going to do well, because I hated it so much that from that, I got a gazillion speaking opportunities where I had to go to other companies or other places to speak. They would approach me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had to really kind of basically practice what I preach, which was become immune to the fear of speaking, where I just did it over and over and over again because I had to, where now it doesn't scare me as much, right?
Yeah.
And that's with anything that you're afraid of, right? Like if you do something enough times over and over again, you become desensitized to that feeling.
Yeah. And you get a relationship with it too.
And you get a relationship with it. And I started this whole philosophy, which was this whole thing of like this 10% target philosophy, which was whatever you want most, it was, make 10 attempts. And the reason was two-pronged. Either you make these 10 attempts and you'll get that thing, or another opportunity will present itself that you never even knew existed. And the other thing that happens is by you making these attempts over and over and over again, you become immune to that feeling of rejection and failure by doing the next attempt. So if you mentally prepare, I'm going to do this 10 times, on the 7th or 8th time doing it, you're already comfortable with that failing part. And it's the same thing with anything in life. Whatever you're afraid of, if you attempt it enough times, it becomes not that fearful and scary after a while.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I live my life.
It's a really good reminder to me because, truth be told, I have done a ton of public speaking, and I have, been in front of a camera of sorts since 1988, a long time.
Wow. Yeah.
And I have been encouraged to do different types of public speaking more recently about really putting together a message that I think is important. And one of the things I always battle with is I don't really know anything, and everybody has such a personal and different walk. I wouldn't have the audacity to put together the thing that I would stand up and talk for 45 minutes. I mean, I know what I really would share, but I have drug my feet on it so hard.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like standing up and saying, this is what I want to encourage you to think and feel right now.
Right.
And that is one of the hardest things for me to do.
Really?
Yes. Because I don't like to impose myself. If we train, I'm very mean.
Yeah.
But other than, and not even really, but yes and no. But if I say, hey, this has been my life's observations, and these are some 5 points around that, that is something that makes me really uncomfortable. So it's interesting that you say that, because I have to take ownership of that too. And I only bring that up because I think people think you stop feeling those ways, and that's not true.
See, I find that interesting, because the way I would what I would turn back at you is how are you any less of an expert than anyone else out there who's babbling on about whatever they're babbling on about.
Well, because that's what always makes me nervous when I see people babbling.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do they have the audacity to act like
Yeah.
they know anything? Because I feel like the more you learn, the more you know, you go, I don't know. So I can share patterns and share insights, but I'm not willing to say,
see, and
I know.
And that goes back to the first thing we were talking about, which was we look at other people and think, wow, they can do it. But, you know, when you really turn the curtain back a bit, it's like,
Yeah.
well, if they can do it, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
You're just as good, if not more qualified than most of these other yahoos doing it. And that's what I tell myself all the time. And I go out there and I do whatever I do. And
Yeah.
like I said, like, who am I? Like, I'm no child psychologist or clinical psychologist or parenting expert.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did a TED talk on like how to build mental strength in kids. Like,
Yeah.
how did I have the audacity, right?
Yeah.
My point is you need audacity in life to accomplish anything. And the truth is anybody who accomplishes anything and who becomes successful in anything, really, it's because they had that audacity to even give it a shot.
Yeah.
And you who actually, you are accomplished in so many things, like of all the, and I see this all the time, you're missing that audacity piece, right? You have to get over that and do it, because I think that you have a lot to actually teach and show. And if I was somebody in the audience, I'd rather hear it from you than half of these other yahoos I'm having to, like, being forced to listen to on it and on social media.
Yeah. I think the other thing that strikes me is you also talked about building resilience in children because you care.
I do care. It's true.
And I think that that's a good enough reason.
Well, then you should take your own advice.
I know. That's who I am. You've taught me today. Okay, my last question. What is something, if it strikes you, that you have learned as a wife that you didn't know and now you've been in it, that you were like, that seems like it's helpful?
As a wife?
As a partner. It doesn't have to be a wife.
Yeah,
Partner to somebody. What have you learned about relationships, being in a relationship? And I know it's a dance and ever changing. But what strikes you as something that really has been a helpful tool to you?
I think let people be who they are. I always say, like, I'm not I'm not a believer in the harder that you squeeze, the more you're going to get. I think that for me and how I operate is I let my husband, I think it's really important to let people do what they want to do and be who they are and live their life, and not to have like an albatross around their neck, right? Because I want to be able to be who I am. I want to be able to live my life and do what I want. And I want to have that type of like relationship. I think that's longevity, right? Like if I don't want someone to put restraints on me, so I don't put any restraints on someone else.
Yeah.
And like, for example, like my husband went to Europe today and on this trip, and then he's going again in 2 weeks. And do you know what I mean? Like I want him to be him, do him, and then I do me. Some people don't appreciate that or like that. They believe that you have to like literally be like on top of the person and like give them a guideline of what they should and shouldn't do. That's not me. That's not how I live my life. And I think that actually is I think for me, and I think, like I said, for like a longevity, it's really important, because I don't want to ever look back at my life and be like, oh, I never did that because I felt restrained, or I wasn't allowed to do that, or I couldn't do that. Like those words don't work in my world, in my life. Yeah. And I see it a lot though. Yeah. And people may look at my relationship and they'll be like, I don't know how it works.
Well, no, it's your relationship though. Right? That's the important thing. I know I get asked a lot, well, do you let Laird, like if he's going to go do something? Yeah. And I start laughing. Yes. I go, do I let Laird? Yeah. I'm not his mom.
And that's the thing. I think you just said it. I don't want to be somebody's mom.
Yeah.
I find that to be like really like unsexy and not cool and just like not my personality. Like you have a mom.
Yeah.
That's not my role. I didn't sign up to be your mom.
Yeah.
And I think that if you, one piece of advice is don't be the mom,
No, be
you know,
partners.
be a partner,
Yeah.
be a team player as
Yeah.
well. Like it's a team. It's not like, you know, like we can quarterback this together. I don't want somebody that I don't need that type of like situation.
Yeah. All right, Jennifer Cohen. Obviously, people can listen to Habits and Hustles. You crush it there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are there any other places that you want to direct people in case they want to go a little deeper on either, you know, the conversations around being more bold or the resilience conversation for our children?
Yes, they can watch the TED Talk, and either TED Talk actually, and they can read my book, Bigger, Better, Bolder, which, by the way, I forgot to give you before the podcast.
I've read it.
Well, I know, because you're like uber prepared. I love it. It's amazing.
Why bother? If you don't do it right, why bother?
You're a woman after my own heart. Seriously, I feel the same way.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for spending some time with me. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, feel free to share it with your friends, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, I want to hear from you. Tell me what's working, what's resonating with you, and how you're getting it done. Keep going.